So, Alan Dershowitz, the endlessly surprising constitutional lawyer, former Harvard law professor, I think he's taken a break from there, but he is a big liberal professor and was a renowned constitutional scholar and is a Hillary Clinton supporter, but he's been among the most amazing people throughout the course of the Trump presidency for his willingness and commitment to simply apply the constitutional standards he knows and teaches without political bias. And so he has many times come to the defense of the Trump administration and pointed out how grotesquely unfair, dishonest, unlawful the conduct has been on the American left, within the DOJ, the FBI, within Congress, the way they use the government and use their powers to attack Donald Trump. So he's kind of oddly become a little bit of an icon on the right, even though he's a liberal and a Hillary supporter, because of his commitment to speaking truth. So something he said caught a lot of people's eye, I think it was yesterday, that I want to just talk about and talk about how alarming it is. So in the course of an interview, it says Alan Dershowitz said, essentially, the government can forcibly vaccinate adults. Not just kids, we'll leave that question off entirely, but can forcibly vaccinate adults. He was being interviewed about the whole threat with coronavirus and COVID-19. And in this interview, attorney and constitutional scholar extraordinaire Alan Dershowitz said, the Constitution gives state governments the power to vaccinate the people in order to protect the people from a contagion. Specifically, his words, let me put it very clearly. You have no constitutional right to endanger the public and spread the disease, even if you disagree. You have no right not to be vaccinated. You have no right not to wear a mask. You have no right to open up your business. This is Alan Dershowitz. The show was Crowdsource the Truth. The host, the interviewer, is named Jason Goodman. He asked, if the government rules you have to be vaccinated, you have to be vaccinated. He said, absolutely. And these are Dershowitz's words. And if you refuse to be vaccinated, the state has the power to literally take you to a doctor's office and plunge a needle into your arm. This is the constitutional scholar who is, in many issues, has come out more on the side of protection of the people, upholding the rule of law. And this is what he's saying the Constitution means. He actually says there are cases, Supreme Court cases. I have not had the chance to research. I'm going to come back to this another day, but I raise it in this first five for a different reason. But he said, you have no right to refuse to be vaccinated against a contagious disease. Public health, the police power of the Constitution gives the state the power to compel that. And there are cases in the Supreme Court. I want to talk about this today in the first five because we're getting to a point with this coronavirus where we are dealing with government mandated tracing and tracking, government suggested tracing and tracking, which lead to government orders to people that you must be tested and then you must stay home if you're tested if the result is bad. And so he's taking it one step further. I want to be really clear about something. I'm going to dive in about the coronavirus in a second, the specifics of that case. He's not talking about if you're already ill and contagious. It's one set of issues related to police power. If you are already ill, you know you have, let's say it's a coronavirus, you know you're contagious, and you refuse to stay home. That's one set of issues where the question, the state power of the government to say, if you don't stay home, we're going to make you stay home in some government-owned facility for your 2-week incubation period. We're going to make you stay home. Now I'm saying that's one question if you're already infected. He's talking about people who feel perfectly healthy, who have no symptoms, who have no reason to suggest they are contagious, that if the government felt this virus threat was serious enough, the government has the right to forcibly vaccinate you against your will. As he says, literally drag you to a doctor's office and plunge a needle into your arm. That's the government's right. It's not the government's right because they are trying to protect you, the person receiving the vaccination. He's saying it's the government's right to do that in order to protect the broader community, protect your fellow citizens, that if something's really egregiously contagious, that everybody they can find has to be vaccinated to protect the general public, to have fewer and fewer people who could possibly infect others. I'm going to tell you, he would not have said that if the constitutional law were not there to back him. I'm assuming it is. Now, cases can be relitigated. Courts can look back at cases and say, that was actually a bad decision. We now, the famous ones about segregation, where there originally was a Supreme Court case that said that segregated public schooling was constitutional, and the court later said, no, it wasn't. We were wrong. But he's saying right now that's the status of where we are. But what I want to talk about on this subject today about coronavirus and what he said and where we stand is this. We are at a dangerous point in this country because the original models that we've been talking about to death, the original models that came out of, I think it was Oxford College, whatever the name of Imperial College in London, Dr. Neil Ferguson ridiculously exaggerated, completely false models. But those numbers, and the numbers that also came out of that institute at the University of Washington, similar numbers that gave alarmingly huge projections about deaths in America, those projections they were kind of the starting point in our country, in our culture, for thinking about how serious is this problem and what are we going to do to take care of it? What are we going to do to fix it? So they set off the whole emergency, massive fear, massive concern, whatever it takes. So we shut down the country. The country was shut down. This is now, whatever we're talking, 8 or 10 weeks ago. Shut down the country, shut down non-essential businesses, all sorts. You couldn't even leave your home unless you had a reason to leave your home, justified by the government. And so that was the kickoff point. Those numbers, as we very soon learned, within a few weeks learned, those numbers were grotesquely wrong. They weren't even the ballpark of real. They got adjusted down by orders of magnitude. But the same sense of fear and just this emergency sense of everything must shut down, emergency powers of all the elected officials kick in, everything is going to be kicked into high gear. Based on the original numbers, we never changed our answer. We didn't change our culture. We didn't change our policies, our medical policies, our healthcare policies. We just kept going on bad numbers. And we kept the mindset going on bad numbers. So getting back to what he's saying, it's really important to understand that people who do follow the numbers, who do recognize we were faked out, we were misled, we were duped, need to be spreading that word, making sure their elected officials get that word, because if we continue down the emergency mindset we started back with the bad numbers, and then you get to now, and you have Dershowitz saying, yeah, the government can forcibly vaccinate you, like it or not. And then you have one of these companies working on the vaccination for COVID-19, and many companies are, but somebody comes up with one they claim is safe. We will be facing that question in this country because there are people. Now, I've never done a show on vaccinations. I've never done a show. It's not one of my issues. But I am a person committed to liberty. Committed to the idea that we don't just surrender our liberty, our healthcare liberty, to the government. And so the danger to our country, because we never got out of the emergency mode from the original wrong numbers, and now we're looking at Dershowitz saying, yeah, you can forcibly vaccinate. Sure, why not? And not only why not, yes, you can. And then people are on hyperspeed trying to come up with a vaccination. We need to be alert in our country to the idea this may be something coming out of even liberal, even Republican governors, even conservatives. Well, we got a vaccination and we were all panicked. Let's just force it on everybody. And so I will tell you, the numbers right now, and I have Matt the Wonderful has a chart I'm going to put up for you in just a moment. This is something that was tweeted out by our governor, Governor Abbott here in Texas. But we have the virus lethality rate, the number of people who die as a result of this virus, the lethality rate is 1% or less. It's less in most cases. Or put the other way, the survival rate of people who contract coronavirus, the survival rate is 98 to 99%. So the argument that if there's an emergency, if a vaccine comes up, and now we're all worried about coronavirus, that we ought to be able to jump in and force vaccination, this is a pushback point, a talking point. It is that for 98 to 99% of the people, it's not lethal. We don't have to start the forcible vaccination of adults over a virus that is about as lethal as the flu. The second point is we're in such a race to get a vaccine. And many vaccines, as you well know, if you follow this or you looked at it because of your own health care or your children's or your grandchildren's health care, some vaccines are bad. The swine flu vaccine originally actually hurt a fair number of Americans. It caused them to become not just temporarily ill after they got the vaccine, but to actually be permanently injured. There is a vaccine injury prevention fund paid for by Congress for a reason, because sometimes vaccines aren't good, they aren't safe. And so the idea that you're going to say, well, because we got scared about this vaccine with bad numbers, that because we're so just, jumping up and down trying to get a vaccine to respond to COVID-19, that we're all just going to be forced to line up and get it. No, some vaccines aren't safe. There's a huge difference. My friends, there's a huge difference between, a new vaccine developed and new vaccine developed, tested, track record, no side effects, doesn't kill half the people to whom it's given. And there's just a rush in this country, an unjustified rush to deal with this challenge of COVID-19, to get us a vaccine as fast as we can. Much of what we're going to talk about today is recognizing we're starting to shape public policy around the availability of this vaccine. In the back of people's minds, when are we going to stop, track, and trace? Well, we're going to have a vaccine before long. We'll talk about that later. But we're counting on a vaccine that is quickly developed, efficacious, no bad side effects. Otherwise, it's just wonderful in every way. And we may not have that ever. But when you're having Alan Dershowitz pontificate way ahead of the availability of a vaccine, that the government has the right to, as he says, grab you, drag you to the doctor's office and stick a needle in your arm, we have to be alert to where this may be headed, especially in blue states, especially in places where the fear has been kept high, even though the infection rate is not as high as we thought it would be, and where the lethality rate is nowhere near we have to be. I'm going to close out the first five by asking Matt the Wonderful to put up, there's a tweet put out by Governor Abbott, our Texas governor, and these are just actual numbers. 4 most populous states by the numbers. So here we have in the great state of Texas, we have 29 plus million people. The mortality rate is about 5 lines down. It's in blue, a little blue highlight. The mortality rate in Texas, 0.0038, well under 1%, well under half of 1%. So meaning the number, I'm sorry, I see they wrote mortality rate. Okay, I hate typos. It's mortality rate, but anyway, you know what they mean. Mortality rate. Texas, 0.0038. Even in, the next one, California, 0.0071. And then you look at Florida, which had, they've been opened right up. Texas and Florida have opened up. Florida, 0.0081. And then you look at New York, the largest number of cases of all, 336,000 cases, 27,000 deaths. The lethality rate, 0.1399. We may put this chart up again later, but I really want you to let that sink in and understand what he's saying by those numbers, that we are making policy around I don't wish disease on anyone. I want us to get after China and fix the problem with China. But we are making serious threats to the liberty of individuals in this country based on a disease with that kind of lethality rate.